I think that this is looking like a very real bull run. This doesn't feel like, I think that this is the next one. And every time we find ourselves in one of those bull runs, we do find all-time highs.
The end of the year Bitcoin bull run is a very real thing in crypto.
And if it usually happens, it blows the roof off.
The chart above shows the historical performance of Bitcoin in the first 10 months of the year, and then in the final 2 months of the year from 2010 to 2022.
Well, I mean, if you look at the historical cycles, when we eventually get into one of these real bull runs, and this is looking like it.
And what you'll find is, if Bitcoin is up at least 100% by this time of the year, then there's a 71% chance, or 5 in 7 chance, that Bitcoin would finish the year higher with average year-end rallies of 65%. This analysis is directly from the head of research and strategy at Matrixport. He said in a note to clients, and as Bitcoin tends to reach its peak by December 18th, we could call the 6 to 7 weeks from early November to mid-December Bitcoin Santa Claus rally.
It looks like Christmas has come early. Well, actually, let's say beginning of Hanukkah. We'll credit this one to Hanukkah.
And as one of the most famous sayings on Wall Street goes, is that a bull market tends to stay in motion unless an external force acts upon it, meaning Bitcoin market action, price action, is reflexive.
I do think another component with Bitcoin in particular is price drives more price action. It's a very reflexive market. We've seen Q3, if we look at Square's earnings report, or Block as they're called now, I believe, they had a 2.5 billion in Bitcoin volume. That's 30 million a day of Bitcoin buying just on Cash App. So there's a lot of retail flows. At CoinShares, we track crypto ETP flows. We saw 10 consecutive weeks of inflows. For the year, we're up 1.76 billion. That's a 4% increase in global crypto exchange traded product AUM. And we're going into the halving. The daily supply of Bitcoin being mined is going to go down by half. There's new demand coming from the ETF. Fingers crossed. We're pricing 90% certainty on ETF approval. So there's a lot of different factors that I think buyers are pricing in here. But the big traders, the macro desks, they haven't started buying yet.
And yes, that's true. As we discussed from our past video, BlackRock Bitcoin ETF approval will pump these 3 altcoins. This will finally allow institutional money, as explained by Brock Pierce.
Clearly the ETF is something that everyone's excited about the prospects of the public being able to access it, which is less so much that as it is institutions that due to their charters may not be able to buy crypto. Their charters require, custodial sort of services. It may have to be certain public markets, exchange, whatever. And so the ETF should open the market to real institutional buying.
And a few of you watched this video yesterday and were still skeptical. I'm still not convinced that this ETF gets approved.
Do you think the SEC will actually approve those applications for spot Bitcoin ETFs? I mean, after all, we all know that SEC Chair Gary Gensler is not exactly a fan of crypto, but he did recently say that he's going to listen to his staff as it pertains to a potential spot Bitcoin ETF. And memos published last week revealed that the SEC met with asset managers BlackRock and Grayscale ahead of that much anticipated decision. And industry experts believe that we could see the launch of a spot Bitcoin ETF early next year. Do you see that happening?
Well, I certainly hope so, and I think it's long overdue. I mean, the idea that this has been attempted for a decade now.
Right.
If an ETF had been made available to the American people when Bitcoin was at $100 or $200, how much wealth would have been created for the American people? The regulators in this instance prevented the American people from being the beneficiaries of this incredible period of wealth creation, and it ended up mostly in the hands of the internationals. And so this bothers me. Regulation, I support sensible regulation, protect the people from bad actors and things, but I don't think what's happened here is ultimately in the best interest of America. What made America great were the capital of innovation.
And let's be very real here so you can make the best choice for you as a crypto investor. Because past performance does not necessarily indicate future performance. History doesn't repeat, but it does often rhyme. When Bitcoin is up at least 50% by the end of October, there is, on average, a 78% chance that Bitcoin will advance even more into year-end. Bitcoin rallied another 68% until year-end on 7 of 9 previous occasions. This analysis is based on 13 years of Bitcoin history. How high, realistically, could that take us this year? Well, it's important to keep in mind that this article, this report, was put out at the beginning of November. They've been absolutely right thus far. But if history were to rhyme, the Santa Claus rally could propel Bitcoin to 56,000 by year-end. Now, anything that could stop a bullish run is another potential black swan-esque event, with Brock Pierce being one of the co-founders of Tether, the largest stablecoin in existence, which is also not really regulated in the US. Is that a risk?
Now, I do want to note that the Wall Street Journal reported in October that Tether, which you co-founded, has been used allegedly by Hamas and other bad actors, including drug dealers and sanctioned Russians. So what was your reaction to that?
Well, the reaction is, of course, bad things are going to happen. I was in the payments business. I was probably instrumental in the launching of Alipay long before Bitcoin, PayPal's largest merchant, my company for years. And so a lot of people have been like, what do we do with all this credit card fraud on the internet? How do we stop that? I said, I have a solution. I can ensure that you will have zero fraud on your platform. They're like, what? How? I said, stop taking transactions. They're like, well, that doesn't work. I go, of course. It's called, you can't stop everything. But you have to be vigilant to a point that you can mitigate as much of it as possible while still keeping your store open, right? Life is filled with risk. How do you manage it? And so I think that what I've seen in terms of the reaction is an attempt to be responsible, to work with the necessary authorities so that collaboration and good communication can occur to mitigate risk as best you can. And so, it's a young industry. They don't have all the experiences of the JP Morgans, and the Wells Fargos, which, by the way, if you look at their track records, plenty of fines and a lot of things that have happened at every financial institution. When you're in the business of moving money, money will be used for bad things. My reaction is, it's not what happened. Obviously, things are going to happen. It's what do you do about it? Do you take accountability? Your responsibility is to be responsible. And so on the surface, it looks like they're being responsible, and I hope they continue to be so.
Now, this next statistic may shock you. This is data from the back end of YouTube, and it actually shows that 1 out of every 3 viewers of Altcoin Daily haven't subscribed yet. So 33% of you are still thinking about it, while an overwhelming 66% of people watch Altcoin Daily and then subscribe. We drop a video every single day, keeping you informed about crypto. You do not want to miss this bull run. And as Brock Pierce states, as his expectation for 2024,
I think that this is looking like a very real bull run. This doesn't feel like, I think that this is the next one. And every time we find ourselves in one of those bull runs, we do find all-time highs. And if it usually happens, it blows the roof off. And so, is $150,000, where we're going to end up? I have no idea. But is it possible? Certainly. And it's also possible that, we find ourselves falling again if we find another one of these terrible events. If another, call it bad actor, has done something that causes a major loss for the industry. These are the things that ultimately chill the markets and stop whatever momentum. But we've got momentum on our sides right now. Wind is at the market's back, and hopefully it takes us all the way through the holidays into next year with an all-time high, and God willing, $150,000 Bitcoin.
Like always, see you tomorrow.